Hi. In South Africa, the COVID-19 restrictions have been eased off from a level 5 to a level 4 as of today. And this has serious implications on the property market. If you're a landlord or a tenant, you're a property investor and you want to know, things are changing. What am I allowed to do? What aren't I allowed to do? In this video, we're going to have a look at the effect of these easing of restrictions on both tenants and landlords. I'm Neil Vorster. I'm a property investment coach. I'm a property practitioner. I own a number of properties and I run an estate agency in Johannesburg that manages townhouses on behalf of investors. I've been fielding a lot of questions lately from my agents, from property investors, and from tenants alike. I'm a property practitioner and I'm going to be giving you my opinion and my interpretation of the current laws and the practical problems that we have to overcome during this time. We're going to do some real live case studies and I'm going to offer practical solutions to situations that we're facing right now. Plus, I'm going to share some good news for the property market as a whole. I'm going to be answering questions such as, can I move into my property? I've just bought a property, can I move into it? My lease is expired, I can't move out. Does that mean I have to carry on paying rent? I'm going to unpack a few scenarios and we're going to look at what can and can't be done, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll have a better understanding of what is allowed and what isn't allowed in the current level 4 status. If I don't address your specific scenario in this video, then please leave a comment below, ask those questions, and I'll make it my business to answer every single one of them. And if they are above my pay grade and I don't understand them, I don't really know the answers, I'll speak to the attorneys that we've teamed up with and we'll come back at you with an answer. Let's start with some good news. The good news is the deeds office is opening. That means that your property that's in the middle of transfer can now go ahead and transfer. So if you're a seller and you've been waiting for that cash, the transfer can now happen. If you're that agent who's done that sale and you're waiting for your commission, you can now get your commission, and I know you guys really need it at the moment. Secondly, the sheriff services are open. That means the sheriff is available to serve notices, to handle court documents, to serve warrants, to issue evictions, and so forth. As you know, the attorneys have been able to carry on working from home, so now you can get that eviction granted. And the only problem is that if your eviction is granted, the actual outworking of that eviction will have to be suspended until the emergency levels drop to levels that will allow movement of people and goods. So let's get into those questions and those case studies that I promised earlier. To understand a way forward, we need to realize that legal contracts are still binding in this country, and that during these restrictions, all that happens is that if there's any government rule or law that supersedes your contract, that'll obviously take precedence. So if your lease states that the landlord has to give you occupation on the 1st of May, which happens to be today, and the law of the country says that you're not allowed to move, then the landlord would be breaking the law by giving you access to your property. So you obviously won't be able to move today. The way I'm going to be dealing with this is I'm going to mention the question, and then I'm going to look at a real live case study to help answer that question. The first question is, can I move into my new apartment? We have a tenant who signed a lease and he's due to move in today, the 1st of May. He's paid his deposit, he's paid his rent, he's paid his administration fees, and he wants to move. So what now? The problem is, under the COVID-19 restrictions level 4, the only movement of people that's allowed is to go and purchase essential goods and to go and avail yourself of essential services, or to go and provide essential services. So you won't be able to move. So we have a real problem. We have a tenant who's paid his money, he wants to move, the landlord wants the tenant, the agent wants their commission, but we're stuck. So the way we deal with this is we just move the whole thing out 1 month. Even though his lease may have expired and he has to pay rent, he's to carry on paying rent there. And his new lease, what he has to do is he's got to extend the occupation date by at least a month. And the landlord, who's now received rental for the month of May, he'd have to refund the May rental. We hang on to the deposit, the deal is still current, the deal is still going to proceed, it's all just been delayed a month. But what the tenant's got to do is he's got to stay where he is and pay rental in the old premises, and the rental that he's paid in advance for his new premises, he would have to be given back. So the lease agreement is not automatically cancelled because the landlord can't give occupation. The landlord and the tenant can choose to cancel the lease by mutual agreement, but then there are certain things that they have to address. The agent who would have who would have secured the lease. He's done his job. He's performed his mandate. He's found a willing and able tenant. That tenant has passed the relevant credit checks. He's paid his deposit. He's paid his rent. He's paid all his fees due. So he's performed. The agent has done everything he has to do. So he'd have to be compensated because his commission, in terms of the law of the country, is due and payable when he finishes his job, when he's finished his job. So should a landlord and tenant choose to cancel the agreement, part of that agreement of cancellation would be who pays the agent's fees. Now, in this case, this real live case study we're doing now, we're just deferring the whole thing for a month. Question 2, I get asked, how do I renew my lease agreement? I want to make sure that as a tenant, secure my tenure for the next year. In other words, I want to know that I'm secure in this place for the next year, that something strange is not going to happen, that the landlord's just going to up my rental or kick me out. I want to be secure for a year. So how do I go about doing it when I'm locked down? I'm at home, I don't have printers, I don't have scanners, so how do we do it? So the question is, how do we go about formalizing a lease renewal when both either the landlord or the tenant don't have access to printing facilities or scanning facilities to be able to sign a document? And as a landlord and as a tenant, the last thing you want is to be in this situation where you're in no man's land and you have a tenant staying in occupation, he's not sure what the rental is, things can change all the time. How we solve this problem is that the agent negotiated the lease renewal between landlord and tenant. He then drafted up the lease renewal agreement and he emailed it to the tenant from his home, of course. And the tenant in turn took that email and responded, attaching the draft lease agreement with an email that said, hereby accept the terms of this lease agreement, and as soon as the lockdown levels permit it, I'll be signing this agreement and I'll honor all the terms herein. The agent then took that email that was forwarded to him and forwarded it on to the landlord, who did the same thing. So now we have a situation where the tenant is secure, the landlord is secure, we have a legally binding agreement, and just to formalize matters, after the lockdown eases enough, the agent will arrange signature of the agreement. In our third case study, the problem we have to solve is somebody saying, I want to buy a property. I'm an investor. I want to buy a property. I think the time is right now and I want to buy now. So how do I go about doing it? We have a case where one of my agents has offered a property to an investor. He's given him photographs. He's given him videos. He's given him cash flows. He's given him everything you as an investor would need to be able to make the decision, except that he hasn't seen the property himself. And he says, I'd like to buy the property, but I have two major concerns. The first one is, how do I deal with hidden damage? Maybe your video didn't capture all the damage. Maybe when I go out there, I see that actually the place is too small or whatever, and I might want to change my mind because I haven't seen the place. And then secondly, how do I go about ensuring that our sale agreement is valid? Because I don't happen to have printing and scanning facilities at my house. What we did is we made the offer to purchase subject to the purchaser doing an inspection of the property within 3 days of the lockdowns being easing enough to enable him to do so. And then if he finds damages or finds problems that he's not happy with, he can simply walk away from the deal, or we can renegotiate to cater for those damages. And then secondly, regarding the validity of the deal, as I said before, a sale agreement has to be in writing by both parties. And in this case, he doesn't have scanning facilities. So what we have to do is we have to agree. And unfortunately, that's not binding. And the solution to obtaining a valid agreement is actually that we can't get him a valid agreement. What we can do is that we can negotiate the whole process by emails, the same way we do a lease agreement, where both parties can agree to sign that document at the end of the lockdown. But unfortunately, if either party changes his mind, that deal won't be enforceable. In case study 4, we have a tenant who moved out at the end of his lease agreement. His lease expired at the end of March, and he moved out. And he moved out without permission. It was in lockdown, and now he wants his deposit back. So what does Mr. Landlord do about this? Let's look at the solution. Firstly, the tenant broke the law. And I'm going to read this. The law says that anybody found to be in contravention of the regulations shall be found guilty and on conviction will be liable to a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 6 months, or he may get both. So this tenant's actually in trouble. And secondly, the owner or his agent can't do the inspection. He can't do the exit inspection because to do so, you'd have to break the law. Thirdly, during the lockdown, the landlord can't obtain a new tenant to be able to mitigate his rental losses. The solution, as I see it, would be that the outgoing tenant would have to carry on paying his rental until the lockdown allows for movement. And the deposit that he's placed, he would actually go towards his arrears. At the end of the lockdown, the owner or his agent and the tenant would jointly inspect the property, assess any damages, and then the landlord would take the deposit that he's holding, and that deposit can be used for any arrear rentals and any repairs and damages. But nothing can be done until the lockdown eases. If the tenant disputes this, he's well within his rights to go to the rental tribunal or to court to fight his case. The first problem he has when he gets to the court or the tribunal is that he's going to have a hard time gaining the court's sympathy when he committed an offense. He broke the law. He broke the law. He broke the law. He broke the law. And that law is punishable by a fine or imprisonment, or both. So what should the tenant have done? He should have spoken to the landlord or the agent, and by arrangement and agreement came to some sort of an arrangement that suited all parties, and then he'd have to get the right permissions from the authorities before he could move. But to simply bolt like that, you really are exposing yourself to trouble. So if you're a tenant in this situation, speak to your agent, speak to an attorney if you want to, get the right permissions, but don't just take the law into your own hands. The next case we want to address is under COVID-19 level 4, people are allowed to return to provinces or return to their homes if they happen to be away from home on a contract or something when the lockdown happened. They're allowed to move, and it's a once-off movement that's allowed. And when we get asked, can I move? Can I use my once-off movement form or authority to move? The simple answer is no. The rule is you're allowed to move back home. You're not allowed to move to a new home. The next question is one asked by agents all over the place, and that is, can we go back to work? Can we open our offices and get back to work as normal? And the answer under level 4 is no, categorically no. You can carry on working from home, so your functionality is very limited. You can't show properties, you can't visit properties, you can't do inspections, you can't move tenants, you can't move buyers, sellers, you're stuck. So until we get down to level 2, at the moment it's level 2, but this is a very changing thing. So please don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, and when the playing field changes, I'll do another video update. So to stay updated, hit that bell, and you can stay on top of things. Another question I get from investors all the time is, can I use this time to renovate my property? You know, you might have an empty unit, or you now got time to apply your mind and you've got some repairs to do and you want to renovate. And the answer is you can do some repairs. Under COVID-19 level 4, you can do emergency repairs. So plumbers, electricians, locksmiths, glaziers, roof repairs, those are allowed. But unfortunately, you're not going to be allowed to repaint your place or to rebuild your kitchen. But how they police this is going to be very difficult. But clearly, you're not going to be able to go in and renovate a unit, retile and repaint. The question I get from investors is, what about my cash flow? What if my tenant has lost his job or he's getting paid half salary and he can only pay a portion of his rental? I've still got my bonds to pay. So what do I do about that? Well, the solution is quite simple. The banks in this country are allowing a 3-month holiday on your bond repayments. All you've got to do is get hold of your bank and make arrangements. What they do is they take, during these 3 months of holiday, they carry on charging you interest. But they take those 3 months worth of interest and they add it on to the end of your bond period. So if you had another 10 years to run your bond, you've now got 10 years and 3 or 4 months. And I've done this as a preventative measure on all my bonds. If you want my opinion on how the lockdown is going to affect the property market in general in South Africa, then watch this video. And if you want to stay in touch with my next COVID-19 update as the property market changes and moves, then subscribe and hit that bell and you'll be notified. And if you have any more questions or queries that you'd like me to address, please ask me in the comments below and I'll include them in my next update. So till next time, goodbye.